So there it's already used just as suggested in the feature definition.
Okay, I have reconnected through my phone. Let me see if this is more stable. Let's see, reverse alphabetical order. I see Sean Turner. I see Michael Richardson. I see Marco. I see Ira, Francesca, Karsten, Christian, and me. Let's wait another minute or two and then get started. I think we're going to have a short meeting today. We don't have anything significant on the agenda. And Marco, as always, thank you so much for taking notes. Wait for my audio to start. There we go. Let's go ahead and get going. Welcome to the first CBOR interim of 2022. I hope everyone had a good new year. And yes, again, thanks, Marco, for taking notes. Let's get into the very light agenda that we have. Do we have any working group document status we need to talk about right now?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So I think this is about the CBOR tags. I'm so confused, my two documents. The network one's already done. The file magic. So I think that we're all done. I'm just a little bit confused as to whether someone's waiting for Karsten and I, or we're waiting for something else. Just don't know. Waiting for write-up, it says. So does that mean it's outside of our problem? It's your problem, Barry?
So I should be driving this as a shepherd. My latest status is that we've had there was a bit back and forth in the in the last interim before New Year. I sent you, the authors, one of your sentences on something that came up there, and I think that the status there would have been that all those latest things would have should wind up in a document that we can have a second working group last call on. And I think that document is not out there yet, but I might easily be mistaken. So the last update that happened to that document was 07, published on the 15th of December, and we had the interim basically on that day. So
so that's why I think that we may have answered the questions, and maybe I should go to look at the minutes.
But I should do that too. My impression was that this was the state of before that talk, but if that is the state after, then my apologies. Then it's up to me to write the Shepherd write-up and do another round of review.
So this was the looking at the diff. This was the header tag, the additional one, 55801 that was added. And so if you have a sentence, then I'll go look at the minutes and figure out what that was. Then I think that you're right that it's on us to do this. So I'll go look at that. Karsten maybe has a better memory since he did the last edit pass.
Well, we have a new version out on December 15th, and I'm just trying to remember whether there are any pull requests.
No.
I think it came. It would have come by mail because I wasn't quite sure where that would go.
No, I think that that this might have been a discussion at the meeting that I think I missed that had a conflict. And so if you sent it by unicast, then I don't have it anymore. So please look, and I'll look in the list archives.
Yep. So I'm just fetching a mail that I sent on December 16th. So that's probably not processed in there yet.
Okay.
Apparently not.
Did you send it to the list?
Yes. But that was more of a reference to another example. And the other is text that was sent after the discussion after the meeting. So if you want to take that up for the working group last call, then I think it would need another version of the document.
Okay, I agree. All right, I'll look at that.
Okay. Anything else on the document status part?
Well, not the document status of this working group. I just wanted to say that I asked the COSI chairs and ADs what's going on with 9052, 9053, 9054. And I hope we are getting some progress there.
Yeah, and I followed up on that because at one point I was the shepherd on those, or actually the responsible AD before I gave it back to Ben. So I got some messages about it, but I haven't seen any activity in Auth 48, and it's been in Auth 48 for way too long.
Yeah, the Auth 48 document says that there was some activity in September, and the RFC editor has sent reminder messages since.
Okay. Well, we'll see. Okay, so then let's go ahead and move on to the other item, the CDDL for CBOR and JSON. Karsten, is that you?
Yes. So let me try to see whether I can share the screen here. I think you have to allow me to do that. Okay, now I can start doing the Chrome process. So the discussion we have had in various places was that it would be good to be able to write a single piece of CDDL that would describe both a JSON and a CBOR rendition of some information. And of course, the problem with that is that often it's not really exactly the same information you would have there. So it can be a bit difficult to describe which part is actually just JSON versus CBOR, and which part is actually the part that describes the subtle differences. And unfortunately, Chrome doesn't show me the window I want to share. Why is it doing that to me? Anyway, if you look into Appendix A of the document that I sent around, there you can see one way of doing this using the feature that we have standardized in RFC 9165. And of course, that does require some tool support. So I'm currently writing the tool support into the second system CDDL tool. Yeah, if you look there are some definitions, generics, JSON only and CBOR only, which use a .feature JSON and a .feature CBOR, and then the combination, which is just a type choice between a JSON only and a CBOR only. So how this would be used can be seen in this example. So if somebody else can share that, that would be nice, because I don't know. I made it. I made it. Almost. This is
You
so
want to try
ridiculous.
again, or shall I revoke your privileges and try myself?
I should be able to do it now. Yeah, I made it.
Wow.
Okay, so what we are seeing here is the CDDA definition for an RFC 8396 claim set, a CWT or COT claim set. And that, of course, was designed to replace JWT claim set, or to be used like a JWT claim set. And for the 7 claims that are defined in the COT definition, 6 actually look very similar to what we have in JWT, and the 7th is one of those examples where things are just not working out. So what we have, for instance, is an issuer. The issuer is identified by the string ISS in JWT. It's identified by the number 1 in a CWT, and this switch JC can be used to switch in the right part of the definition. So this works very well. What doesn't work so well is the CTI claim, because the JTI claim in JWT is not using a byte string, but it's using a text string. And these really cannot be mapped to each other without losing some context. So this definition is not trying to describe the JTI part, but if we added the JTI part, of course, it would have a JSON only there, and would describe how the JTI claim label maps to a text string. So I think this is reasonably easy to read, easy to use, easy to write. it's maybe the actual structure inside this JC switch macro is a little bit, yeah. It's an idiom that one needs to get used to, but it's an idiom that you actually can get used to pretty quickly. So I don't see a big problem there. So the 3 lines here are really what I expect more and more documents to simply use in their CDDL, and then they can write a single piece of CDDL for both CBOR and JSON. And for instance, SNML might have used that. It's easy to write the SNML spec in a way that makes use of this JC switch, and new documents can go ahead with that. And essentially, I would like to poll the CBOR community if this is really what we should be doing, how we should be using CDDL to describe both JSON and CBOR in a single specification, or whether we this is all garbage and we have to wait for CDDL 2.0, which of course could have a feature specifically, mechanism specifically designed to support this.
Karsten, if I can ask, the point here is, to my less insufficiently caffeinated brain, the point here is that when we're doing JSON, we want a string, and when we're doing CBOR, we want an integer key. That's
in this specific example, yes.
Yeah, and we don't want to mix and match them. We don't want to have, you know, a string here, and then in CBOR we don't want to have a string and then an integer key, and then, you know, whatever, back and forth. And that's why there's this at the bottom, those highlighted lines essentially says you do A or you do B, and that's what your business is.
Yeah, the point is in CWT you actually can have text labels. But you're not supposed to use the text labels for the ones where we have integer labels. So it's really important to be able to say that this is not just an alternative that you use randomly, but this is something that should only be used with JSON, and this is something that should only be used with CBOR.
The reason the JC macro isn't or can't be defined above those where it's used?
The sequence of rules in CDDL is
irrelevant.
Okay. Irrelevant. So I generally put boilerplate at the end of CDDL specifications, but that's just a style issue. Okay, maybe we don't need an answer right now, but I think it's important that if we go this direction, we do this consciously, because that will be used in a lot of specifications from now on. Good, I think this item is done.
And the chat reads positive, with Ira, Michael, and me saying that, yeah, this sounds good.
Okay, so please all try it in your environments if you are running into the JSON CBOR problem. Of course, this simple example doesn't actually cause all the problems. So for instance, in JSON, we have the problem that the number range is limited if we are using IJSON, and that sometimes leads to interesting gymnastics. And yeah, all that is probably requires some additional functionality. We might also have to put in a few more control operators so we can turn a number into a string and things like that. But these are well-defined extension points, so we can go there.
Brief question, looking forward to the CDDL2 proposed features of actually matching data, that is kind of assigning matches to names. Is this in conflict with, or is there some envisioned way of how these labels could then say that this value that is somewhere deep in this byte string is actually equivalent to that value in the numeric form? Or say if the CBOR version said it's base 64 encoding of this, and the CBOR is just its binary data for that, could we match this and that in those annotations? It's not something to be resolved here, but it would give me confidence in this approach if that would work.
Yeah, so something like a .base 64 might be useful, but I think that actually describing the transformations that are needed to make JSON and CBOR renditions equivalent are going a little bit beyond what we are currently doing in CBOR. So once we add transformations to CBOR, we probably need more expressibility. But for CNML, for instance, we have exactly that situation where we have bytes on the CBOR side and base 64 text on the JSON side. And with JC, we can switch between the two, but we cannot say the base 64 needs to be decoded to get the equivalent bytes. Okay, I think we are done with this.
Okay, and that would mean that we're done with the agenda as written. Does anyone have anything else to discuss?
Have one late guest. Brendan, do you want to speak up quickly?
Can you hear me?
Very quiet.
Yes, we can hear you.
Very quiet. Is that better?
Much better.
Okay. So I have been working on a draft in the suit working group where I have realized I have a need for a generic set of CBOR parse errors, and perhaps a more specific set over top of that for content validation errors, the sort of things where you might compare against a schema and find mismatches or missing things. As a result of that, I'm wondering if there's a need for that in general, or if that's something that's very specific to the use cases I'm looking at. So I'm wondering if there's a desire to have that kind of work in the CBOR working group, and if so, if anyone would like to work with me on that. That's it.
Can you give us an example of one of these parse errors?
Yeah, certainly. So the first one obviously is going to be an overrun, where you run out of the expected length of data that you've got. Then there are type mismatches, key mismatches, integer decode overflows, integer encoding errors, and because CBOR has a number of features that I would call probably optional, particularly the floating point support and the and some of the other simple types. There's also a question about unimplemented objects. There are more beyond that, but that's just the most basic ones that probably make a good example.
I think that there's, yes, I would be interested in helping you to do this. I think that there are two broad categories of errors. Ones are, for the first examples you gave, is there aren't enough bytes. I can't complete this. This is broken. This is invalid CBOR. And the other ones are largely this doesn't map properly to something we have, but it's probably valid CBOR. And I think
Yeah,
those
that's
are
right.
two broad categories of, from the application's point of view, they may be irrelevant, but from the person reviewing the error, it may actually be pretty important to know, yeah, this is actually valid CBOR, but this device doesn't understand it. So what do we do? Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah,
okay. So you're gonna cast me, and I guess you have a document you're thinking about writing.
yeah, that's right.
Great.
Maybe it's worth remembering that in CBOR we have well-formedness errors and we have validity, where validity is a relatively complex concept. So I think it's important to separate these two. And I would also like to add the observation that what kind of error something generates often is dependent on how you implement things. So you may know that something is an error, but you may not necessarily know what kind of error a human spectator would see there.
Absolutely. But beyond that, there's also another axis to this problem, which is that the type of parser you're using is going to dictate a certain amount of this. So, for example, if you're using a pull parser, you won't know about well-formedness until you're done. And by that point, it's too late. Meanwhile, you may want to have a whole different set of errors for something like cozy validation. I don't know if that belongs in this group or if that's something to take on to cozy.
It's worth writing the document, and then I think it maybe is worth the discussion if it turns out that we're having a lot of cozy specific things.
Okay, well, I will write the document and submit it to the CBOR working group after running it past you, Michael, since you volunteered, and I guess we'll see where it goes from there. Thanks for your time.
Excellent. Thanks for bringing that to us. Oh, Ira, go ahead.
On that last, Brendan, which I think is, and thank you, Michael, for chipping in. I think it is needed. When you said whole set of errors for cozy, I was thinking of several applications from Global Platform and elsewhere that are now using cozy and have yet another level of errors that are somewhere in validity, I guess, or not implemented. And whether just suggesting that it would be nice to be able to conceptualize and label sets of errors or have a naming convention or something.
It's a bit like it might need to be a hierarchical structure so that you can at least get a classification of what the top level that's coming that this is coming from is.
I think it's interesting to see how excuse me.
No, go ahead, Carson.
It's interesting to see how HTTP has handled this. So they have these error classes like 4 or 5, and then within these error classes they have some defined error codes that are describing specific issues that the protocol processor runs into, but they also describe issues that are close to application issues. For instance, the was it 409 conflict in HTTP? That's pretty interesting because it means something about your application. Your application didn't like the data. So maybe we need a little bit like a structure for these errors as well. As I said, distinguishing well-formedness, validity, and acceptability to an application, and so on. So, but the one point I really wanted to make is we generally standardize error numbers when we expect the state machines to react differently to different errors. So if I'm writing an HTTP client, I know that when I get a 409, then I have a specific situation, and my client might want to react differently to a 409, even if there is a problem report attached to that or something. The 409 has a very well-defined meaning. And I'm wondering which of these error codes actually have a meaning that appear would actually react on. I mean, if the CBOR is not well formed, that's difficult to react to, because a reasonable implementation always sends well formed. So what does it mean to get this error message? So I think it would be good to have an idea of what the implementations are going to do with these error codes.
So I think that Suit may be an interesting case because of this. The problem that Suit faces is that it's not a conventional two-party communication pattern. You have a minimum of 3 parties involved, where one of them is a relay, but also responsible for running that state machine. So the relay ending up being part of the pattern does actually produce some different results. So for example, if you have CBOR that's not well formed, it needs to know that the CBOR isn't well formed, because this may have been a signed document. And if you have CBOR that's not well formed inside a signed document, that tells you a lot about whoever wrote that document, and that you need to find out what's happened there. And it could potentially produce an automated response in fully automated systems. So there's a lot that will be going on there, and I think it's possibly not as simple as good peers don't produce malformed CBOR.
Yeah, if you can write a little bit of that into the document, then I think we're good.
It's also a case for, I think it's for being able to get and decode the CBOR that is well formed, even though it ends short or other things, so that you can actually tell, like, you may need to look at it to find out who screwed it up. And if the tools don't let us get, the libraries refuse to do that because they take more of a nanny approach to things, then I think that's a problem for that. So I think that it's important to be able to return an error as well as data, and that's actually an interesting problem, I think, for some things. But anyway, I think that should fall out in the document. If this topic is dead, I want to return to the first topic.
I was just going to say, it looks like we can go to the next thing someone wants to discuss. So go ahead, Michael.
So I did pull up the thread while we were chatting to remember where we are. And I think that the 2 items were to figure out why this stuff was in an appendix. And I think I can write a sentence for that. But the more important was essentially a beauty contest as to whether or not the CBOR tagging of things that are not CBOR should say CBOR or something else. And Carsten had expressed a view that the CBOR indicated that the encoding of the tag was CBOR, even if the stuff afterwards was not. and I at least seemed wrong, and I think that Ira also felt that was wrong. So I'm wondering if there's some other opinions in here, or whether the question was well formed.
Yeah, go ahead, Carsten. Just speak up. We have a small enough group.
Yeah.
No need to raise hands.
So the reason why I wasn't so happy about changing both the tag and the content is that then you will have implementations that check the tag and implementations that check the content. And you build yourself an interoperability problem that you didn't have to have. So maybe this can be remedied by writing strong words about the semantics being in the tag and not in the content. But knowing implementers, I'm sure they will latch on the content and ignore the tag.
I don't quite understand how that is related to whether the okay, so yeah, sorry, I see now.
We have
so
two indications.
Tag number and the content of the byte string that would tell you what to do with the tag in between them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Since the purpose of this byte string is in some sense because we have to put something there, we might as well put something there that clues a human to that who might be looking at it to what's there. The human is likely to key off of the string and not have, unless they have a good hex dump and a good memory, they may not recognize the rest. But either way would clue into them that you should probably apply a CBOR decoder to the first 12 bytes. But then, not the question is, well, then what happens afterwards? So now they have to look at the tag and recognize what's there, and they have to do that anyway. So the only real question is whether there's an extra clue that's worth communicating to the human or not. That's really it. And I think I think it does fall into a beauty contest here, and I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other. That's why I'm asking in this context.
Yeah, bringing up the human really is a nice example for the problem that I'm having. An attacker in a security context will have lots of joy if they can write a tag that means something different than what a human sees there. So that's another reason maybe not to key on that string. Yeah, but I certainly can live with CBOX or whatever was proposed here. I'm just pointing out that there are little effects that you may not want to have.
Would somebody else like to offer an opinion? Is the question clear? Should we write an email making the question clearer? Because this is definitely a bike shed question. So everyone should have feel free to have an opinion.
Blue.
All right. Well, I think I'll end this and write the email then.
That sounds like a good plan. Okay, anything else that we need to discuss today? Hearing nothing, I will again thank everybody for joining, and Marco for taking notes, and Christian, of course, as well. And one last call. Anything else? And then we are adjourned, and we will see you all in 2 weeks.
See you then. Bye-bye.
Thank you. See you.
Okay, bye-bye.